Welcome back to First News. Happy Wednesday. And because it's Wednesday, that means it is time for our Opportunity Arkansas segment. So Arkansas has been buzzing with legislative activity, and here to help us navigate these developments is Jay Robertson, Public Affairs Director at Opportunity Arkansas. Good morning, Jay. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's nice to get to talk to you here. I know we talked a little bit outside of the station one day when we had a little event there, but it's nice to have you on and we can talk a little bit about what's going on here in our state. So, Jay, let's start with those tax cuts. Recently, there's been some legislation aimed at reducing the state's income tax rate. Can you provide us an overview of those changes and what their expected impact on Arkansas residents is?
Absolutely. Yeah. So income tax elimination in Arkansas has really been a priority for us. And it's been a priority for lawmakers, too. The governor has even said recently that she wants a laser-like focus on eliminating our state income tax. We don't expect to see really some more action on income tax this session. What we're hearing is that lawmakers want to wait until after the fiscal year ends. And so we're hoping that we'll see more action on that later this year. But the progress that's been made so far is really remarkable. I mean, since 2017, if you jump back, we had a top state income tax rate of 6.9%. Today we're at 3.9%.
Oh, wow.
So we've almost cut that in half.
Yeah.
And it's important because we've got two neighboring states in Texas and Tennessee that already don't have a state income tax. It makes us hard to compete for new workers and new businesses. And then the states around us that do have income taxes, like Louisiana and Oklahoma, they're working to reduce theirs. And just last week, Mississippi actually passed a bill that fully phases out their state income tax over a number of years.
Oh.
They'll go below Arkansas in a couple of years. And so we want to applaud the progress we've made, but also not lose the momentum because we're in a race between these other states. We're all competing for jobs and workers, and we know that Arkansas is a great place to live and we have a lot going for us here. But if we want to remain competitive, it's something that people consider when they're looking to locate. And income tax is important too, because if you think about the actual effect of taxes, when we tax excise taxes on cigarettes and beer and things like that, we acknowledge that we're adding taxes on things to discourage people from buying those things.
Right.
Well, income tax is a tax on work. And so the more that we tax people's income, the more we're discouraging work. And so we're optimistic that we'll see some more action on that later this year. But since the prerogative of the legislature seems to be that we're going to hold off on income tax for a little bit, there's a lot of other tax cuts that have been filed.
Yeah.
And we're hopeful that in the last few weeks, we'll see some action on some of those as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I know, Jay, as you're talking about like Texas and Tennessee not having state sales tax, that's always one thing. Like when I talk to business owners and they talk about starting a new business and things like that too, a lot of them are like, well, we're just going to do that in Texas, but kind of live over here in Arkansas. And so, yeah, I mean, it makes a difference. And you want those, income tax rates to be low to be competitive and things like that too. But in addition to the income tax cuts, there's also been some discussion about adjusting the standard deduction. What can you tell us about the Inflation Reduction Act of 2025?
Yeah, so that's really another way at trying to attack our income tax rate. So there's a couple of ways you can go about it. Like obviously we have a standard deduction that allows you to deduct up to a certain amount of your income from income tax. One way to reduce the income tax is just lower the rate. So you're lowering the rate that everyone's paying. Another way is to increase the deduction. And so the ultimate impact, and I think the ultimate goal is to get to zero because, like you said, Texas and Tennessee have proven that we can do that. And so that's another way to get there. We could see some action on that. You mentioned businesses, and there's also a couple of bills that we've highlighted that would be really important that maybe don't get as much attention, but they can really have damaging impacts on small business. One is the franchise tax. So it's a tax on capital stock, so inventory that businesses have in addition to the corporate income tax. Arkansas is one of only 16 states that still have this. It's kind of an antiquated tax. And it really punishes small businesses, entrepreneurs the most because it's not a tax on profits. It's a tax on your capital stock. And so if you're a new business just starting up, that can be really detrimental. And so we've got a bill out there introduced by Representative Kavanaugh, the chair of the House Revenue and Tax Committee, that would fully eliminate that. That would be around a $34 million tax cut that would really help small businesses.
Wow, yeah.
And so we're excited about that one. There's also another bill out there that's a little smaller, but it's a sales tax registration tax. Something that a lot of people don't even realize.
Yeah.
We're charging taxes on businesses for the privilege of collecting sales taxes for the state. And so this is a bill filed by Representative Kendon Underwood. And it's not a huge tax cut. It's like $500,000, but we also have to keep in mind that there's a compliance burden when you're starting a business. If you're having to pay a fee to the state to collect sales taxes, well, that could be the thing that makes a difference for somebody, whether they decide to move forward or not.
Sure.
And so all these other little taxes, if we're not going to reduce income tax and tackle that big number, there's a lot of these smaller ones that we can just wipe off the books and make Arkansas really a more competitive place for business.
Yeah, make it real alluring for people to come in and start their businesses, or people that are already here. Jay, my husband tried to start a small business 7 or 8 years ago, and he ran into all kinds of problems trying to start a small business, and a lot of it was tax stuff. And to be honest, we're still dealing with a lot of the tax stuff, even though he's closed that business down for a couple of years now. So anything that we can do to make it better for small businesses to come into Arkansas, stay in Arkansas, and do business here in Arkansas is great. But Jay, we do need to talk to about constitutional amendments. There's been an effort to modify some of the state processes. Can you talk to us about some of the key points of these changes?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's been a lot of attention on this because every time we go to the election, it seems like we're deciding on a lot of these constitutional amendments. These things are really complicated. It's hard for folks to understand exactly what they do sometimes. And so there's been a handful of bills, some of which were already passed by the legislature, that aim to simplify the process, promote integrity, because a lot of these operations, you have folks who are dropping millions of dollars from out of state to come in and put something in the Arkansas Constitution. And our perspective is the Constitution is our foundational governing document. It's not a place to make complicated public policy decisions when voters have limited information to decide on those. And so that's what some of these bills do, is to provide more integrity to the process. One that we're really excited about is something that we've talked about before, a bill by Representative David Ray that would require a fiscal note be attached to every amendment that gets on the ballot, so that voters can actually see what the cost would be for this to go into effect.
Okay, yeah.
That's really important because, the quote-unquote education rights amendment that we saw previously would require the state to spend $1 billion on all these new education programs. And that's a huge fiscal impact that would probably delay tax cuts, maybe even require tax increases to fund that.
Sure, yeah.
And that can make an impact on how people vote. And so we're hopeful the legislature will continue that, and so that we can add some more integrity to the process and give voters more information to really make informed decisions when we go to the ballot.
I think that's very important, too, because I know this last go around, there was a lot of amendments on there that I didn't understand. And then I also felt like there were ads being put out that intentionally confused us on what we, should, know, like just complete transparency, but it was meant to be really confusing. And then I learned that it was like an out-of-state company that had come in and dropped that money to try to confuse us. And so I'm really glad to hear that, because I would like for it to be a more simple process, and I would like to understand without having to really, dive into what's going on with these amendments to know what I'm voting for. Jay, we always appreciate your time with our Opportunity Arkansas segment, and we appreciate you stopping by this morning and providing your insight into the state's activities here. But we'll talk to you again next week.
Absolutely. There's still a lot left. Feel free to check out our website. We're reading all the bills and posting updates there on opportunityarkansas.org. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for having me.